Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mile High Sports Today. I'm Sean Drotar. That's Nate Lundy. Nate, we have a Super Bowl, and it's the same one from a couple of years ago.
Exactly what no one on earth wanted.
No, but and I'm not going to sprain myself on the shoulder picking and pat myself on the back picking the favorites. But on Friday, you were with us. Cody Rourke was with us. Troy Renck was with us. Troy will join us today as well. And I'm the only one that picked the Eagles and the Chiefs. Was some of this, as Danny Bailey and I were talking about it before the show, wishful thinking that people just kind of wanted to see somebody new and so projected upon the Bills the idea that they'd knock the Chiefs off this time?
No, I mean, I think I think that's probably a little bit of it. I think that, we always lean into that. I mean, for example, as soon as the lines came out, I put money on the Eagles for the Super Bowl. And I think there's a little bit of it that's probably, Sean, the wishful thinking, the hope, the desire to have a different game than what we've seen before. But at the end of the day, the Bills had a couple of little mistakes. I thought they had a great game plan. I thought Josh Allen played his ass off. I mean, I think that game yesterday afternoon/evening was about as good as we could ask for, and was frankly kind of what we expected. I mean, these two teams are butting heads on a consistent basis. It's two phenomenal quarterbacks, two quarterbacks that every team in the National Football League would be happy to have. So by the time it was all said and done, yeah, I mean, I think, was Friday's pick a little bit wishful thinking? Yeah. But for me, it was also, I mean, I had been on the Bills for 2 months, and I stuck to my guns.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can't really blame you. The problem here for the Bills and for Josh Allen, and I don't think it's anything personal, because I think he played well. I think the Bills played a great game. I thought
I did. I really thought they played well. I mean, we can go back and we can talk about all kinds of little, nuanced things. But, for example, I was talking to somebody yesterday who said, well, if they don't go for two on that touchdown right at the very beginning, the first attempt that they had, now we're talking about a different score. Yeah. We're talking about, well, yeah, except everything in the world, including, frankly, the Eagles Commanders game earlier in the day, everything in the world tells you, if there is a penalty on the touchdown or what have you that allows you to move it to the 1 yard line, you go for two.
Yeah, of course you do.
You just do,
especially when you can run.
When you can run the way that they can.
Yeah.
And so there's a whole bunch of things that we'll wind up talking about, especially as we get into the off season. But I said to the person that I was talking to, and I was like, yeah, except that's just what you do. I mean, you should have done it.
The one, yeah.
Now. You want to point some fingers? We can point some fingers at the fact that they went for two twice and failed both times.
Right.
Well, that's a problem.
Well, and that's also not necessarily are those poor decisions, or is it just excellent execution by the Chiefs? Obviously,
have a good defense.
They got Chris Jones in the middle. That since Aaron Donald retired, he's I think the most dynamic nose tackle in the game. He lines up all over the defensive line, so it gives them an opportunity to make mismatches. So, no, I mean, and this is why I guess I picked the Chiefs. Not only were they at home, obviously, but that team has been together for a while. They're meticulous. They're kind of cold-blooded. They have a slow heartbeat because they've been there and they've done that. And the truth of the matter is they've switched from being an offensively minded team to a defensively minded team, but the offense is still with Mahomes. And I get that they have now, again, broken their own record for the most one-score wins in a single season. They have the NFL record now for the most of one-score wins. And I look at this team, and I've said it earlier in the year, winning close games is a skill. And the Chiefs do it better than anybody. And it's because they got that guy quarterback. Patrick Mahomes had 2 rushing touchdowns. The first time in his career he's ever had a pair of rushing touchdowns, and still makes the passes when he needs to. I mean, just they are just tough to beat.
So I think, look, this is going to sound so overly simplified, but I want to go back to actually something we talked about a couple of weeks ago. In the AFC, if you want to make a Super Bowl, you have got to get the Chiefs to stop having home field. You've got to get it to where they're the 2 seed or the 3 seed. End of story. That is it. that home field advantage at Arrowhead, as much of a dive as that damn stadium is, because it is trash. They own it. And they know how to play off of their crowd. Their crowd gets loud. And that becomes an advantage that, regardless of who you are as an opposing team, is a really difficult mountain to get over. It is. And it's part of the reason why, when Sean Payton said, 2 weeks ago, well, we would have beaten the Chiefs. I don't know but here's the thing. I don't know whether that happens or not, but I would have liked to have seen it. I would have liked to have seen either Buffalo or Baltimore. I don't give a rip who. I would have liked to have seen Buffalo or Baltimore at the 1, just so that we could have seen the Chiefs have to go do it on the road. And then if they had done it on the road, then what are you going to do? Right. But the home field advantage that they have at Arrowhead is redonkulous. And the sooner that someone in the AFC can figure out how to wrestle home field away from them, the better.
Well, the way that's going to happen, quite frankly, is the teams in the AFC West, including the Broncos, are going to be more dangerous. They're going to maybe steal a game here or there. The Chargers made the playoffs. They were knocked off. The Broncos made the playoffs. The Bills lost to the Chiefs. The Broncos got boat raced by the Bills 31-7. So I do look at Peyton's claim as a little dubious, but
I just think that, to me, that's a matchup thing, Sean. That's just a matchup thing. The Broncos do not match up well against Buffalo. I think they match up better against Kansas City, but that's not a surprise to a certain extent. I mean, I know you don't get into this microscopic detail, but Sean, you try to build your team to have success within your division, right? You recognize who your opponents are. You recognize who the coaches are. You recognize the quarterbacks, and you try to build yourself to be able to be successful within the division, right? That's how you find success. Then after that, it's can you do it in the playoffs?
Right.
The Broncos are not built to beat the Bills. They're built to try to compete with Kansas City.
And that's where I think that the Chiefs are interesting, because you saw an evolution there. Mahomes with the 2 rushing touchdowns, first time in his career. There was almost an idea that, Lamar Jackson can run, and Josh Allen can run, and Jalen Hurts can run, and Jaden Daniels can run. Oh, by the way, don't forget about number 15, who can move a little bit too. And the point you make about the Broncos that's interesting is they're not that good a matchup against the Bills or the Ravens, because those quarterbacks run that often. Expect the next time the Broncos play the Chiefs to see Mahomes move a little bit more as well, if they are having any difficulty in the game. But when you look at the way that these teams have played, mobile quarterbacks in all cases, Mahomes obviously can do more than he lets on. Mahomes is a little bit like Bo Nix in that regard, right? If you need him to run, he's not only an able runner, but a skilled runner, and is very adept at getting the first downs. He's much like Nix in that regard. But in theory, in Mahomes' case, he's such a good passer, you don't want him to have to run, but you can. And so I think when you look at those two quarterbacks, there's some similarities there. If the Broncos offense was like the Chiefs offense, could Patrick Mahomes have 400+ rushing yards like Bo Nix did? Yeah, he could.
Well, he could, but the thing is, it's one of the things that was pointed out yesterday, especially post-game with some of the stats. There are not a lot of designed runs for Mahomes.
Nor should there be. You don't want him to exposed and get hit.
He's not a guy that is running it because that was the play call. He's running it because of the fact that a play doesn't develop the way that it's expected, and he's buying himself time. That's what allows a guy like Xavier Worthy to be dangerous. Right. That's what allows a guy like Travis Kelce to be dangerous. Kelce is one of the best I've ever seen, receiver, tight end, whatever you want to call it, whatever position you want to go with, at being able to find a spot within the defense. He's extremely good at finding those spots on the field, especially when Mahomes is having to extend things with his legs. So but designed runs don't happen with that guy.
No,
like the designed run on the touchdown, that was like one of the first there was only a handful of designed runs for him all season.
And it was such a good play.
It was
fake.
A brilliant,
such a good play because he kind of just loped.
Yes, he did.
For the first couple steps, giving the impression that there was a handoff, and then turned up field and hit the Jets, and
did exactly what you would want him to do. So
it was beautiful.
Again, I come back to, if you want to wrestle the Lamar Hunt Trophy away, you've got to wrestle home field away. And we know that first and foremost, we know that is difficult for Baltimore because of the division that they're in.
Right.
Okay.
Of course.
We know that it is difficult for the Chargers or the Broncos because of who you're competing against, right? We know that it is difficult for Buffalo because Miami is a good team, right? There is some competition in that AFC East. I don't believe that it's coming from the Jets. I believe the Patriots still need time. And so the best chance you have to wrestle home field away from the Chiefs is frankly the Buffalo Bills. That's your best.
Yes.
That is your best opportunity. Houston is not consistent enough. Baltimore is in a really difficult division, and you have to hope that Buffalo can continue to be in an AFC East where there's, where they basically have one competitor, and that's Miami. That's the best you can ask for in terms of wrestling it away in the AFC.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at this from the Broncos' perspective, it's pretty straightforward. The Broncos have the opportunity to impact that themselves. You get 2 cracks at the Chiefs every year.
Yeah,
you're going to have to win one of them.
You're going to have to help your own cause.
You are. You're going to have to beat them. You're
Yes.
going to have to, at best, at worst, you'll have to split every year.
Yes.
You'll have to find a way to do that, and it probably starts with winning the games in Denver and not when they are starting second stringers and basically tossing the game. You'll have to beat Mahomes and company in Denver. And
but you almost, you're a blocked field goal away from doing it in their house this year. So I don't feel like that is that much of a stretch. I think this Broncos team will get better, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
It is obviously a great run for the Chiefs. It continues. First opportunity. I mean, they could get 3 in a row. No one's ever won 3 in a row, of course. The Bills have gone 4 times in a row, of course, back in the Jim Kelly, Thurman Thomas, Bruce Smith era.
Right.
And walked away with nothing. One of the most underrated runs actually in NFL history, but it didn't end with a title. And the Chiefs in this case going Mahomes, joining John Elway and Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady, pardon me, the only guy to beat him in a Super Bowl, Tom Brady, when he did so with the Bucs. Now making it 5 Super Bowls. He's not even 30. Yikes. Yeah. Over on the NFC side, we talk about the Eagles. This game got out of hand. 4 turnovers for the Commanders, none for the Eagles. That's a very good way to lose a football game, and it got ugly. But the Commanders and Jaden Daniels will be a problem going forward. Jaden Daniels is legit, and this Super Bowl is intriguing because the Eagles put up 55 points on the Commanders, a new championship game record. Broncos fans know what the Super Bowl record is. Don't need to remind you of that one, but the number is really, really similar. 7 touchdowns on the ground for the Eagles, 3 each by Barkley and Hurts. And here's why I look at this Super Bowl and think, now remember, last Super Bowl they were in 3 years ago, the Eagles only lost by 3. The Chiefs had to score 17 points in the 4th to come back and win that.
Yes.
Jalen Hurts had 3 rushing touchdowns in that Super Bowl.
Yes.
They were close. Now they got Saquon Barkley. You look at what the Bills did, what was successful. Josh Allen played well, but it was really the running game that kept the Bills in it, right?
Yes.
That kept Mahomes off the field, everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And you had a running quarterback,
yes.
which is basically rather unique, and you had a great running back in Allen and Cook. Here's the thing. If you're talking about just running game, Barkley is better than Cook, and Hurts may be better than Allen. This is an Eagles team that if they don't make mistakes, they could very well beat the Chiefs in the Super Bowl.
So what you just said, going back to something I said a minute ago here in the segment, what you just pointed out, Sean, is the reason that as soon as the line came out, I bet on Philly on the money line. I also think that it is worth it to go throw $20 on Saquon Barkley to be the MVP.
Oh, if they win, he'll be the MVP. If they
win, my guess is that Saquon will be the MVP. It will not be Jalen Hurts. I believe it will be Saquon if they win, because if Saquon goes off, and Saquon can go off for 110 and still be the MVP. He doesn't have to go for $185 or anything like that. Okay. He can dominate so well on the ground that I think that is one of those things that heck, parlay the 2 things together. Put Philly on the money line and Saquon to be the MVP, because if it happens, it's likely to be that
it's going to be the
duo.
2 together. Yeah, I agree with you.
Because we know that Jalen Hurts can run. We also know that if you go back and look at the season statistics, you're talking about a Chiefs team that gave up little over 100 yards a game on the ground. Now, a lot of that is because their defense came on in the second half of the season, right? But they're giving up a lot more than that here in the postseason, in the game against Houston, as well as what happened yesterday afternoon. So they're susceptible on the ground. I know that that'll be the focus for the next, 12 days for Andy Reid and for Steve Spagnuolo, is how the hell are you going to slow down Saquon Barkley? The problem that I have with that particular theory is that so far this year, there are 20 games now that people have been trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
And they haven't been able to do it. And a lot of that starts with the front five that Philly has. They have a spectacular offensive line. Even without Jason Kelce, they still have a spectacular offensive line. And that is opening up the holes for a guy that you can't bring down one-on-one. You just can't. The way to get him is you either got to get around his legs low and trip him up, or you better hope that you've got one of your teammates there to try to help you out. Because it's like, I mean, the only person, in my opinion, in the entire National Football League that is better is Derrick Henry. That's it. I mean, to me, it's Derrick Henry 1A, Saquon Barkley 1B,
yeah,
and then it's everybody else in the league.
And Barkley's a little more dangerous as a receiver,
and he is, and that's the thing that I think, you know, it's why, you know, for example, it didn't wind up happening, for example, right? But it's why on Friday I gave you the bet and I said I'll take the over on Saquon Barkley on 12.5 receiving yards, and it didn't wind up happening. But why? Now, he had a drop. There were some things like that that would have actually gotten us to that total, but it was because if you blitz, which I told you on Friday, Washington does in the top 5 in the league in terms of blitz rate, who does that benefit? The guy that we cashed on with the exception of the dropped touchdown, Dallas Goedert, who, remember, his over-under was 40.5 receiving yards. He crushed that.
Yeah.
Why? Because you bring that pressure. Who benefits? Saquon and Goddard. And I think that if the Chiefs, if Spagnuolo tries to get aggressive, which we know he will, on that 4th down play that Dalton Kincaid should have caught, Spagnuolo brought the house. And McDermott and Josh, they all knew it. They all knew it was coming. I can't believe Josh Allen got that pass even remotely close to being caught by Kincaid. Because he had a Mack truck coming in his face, and he still managed to throw it within striking distance for his tight end. But if you do that, not on a 4th down play like that, but if you do that over the course of the first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, Jalen Hurts can make you pay with Goddard on one side and with Barkley on the other, bringing him out of the backfield. So you're exactly right, Sean. Do not underestimate what he can do receiving. Because, oh, by the way, Baltimore did the same thing with Derrick Henry this season.
Yeah.
Get him the ball out on the outside, because as soon as you give that guy 2 or 3 steps, good luck stopping him.
Buffalo had success yesterday when they were able to get to the outside too, and Philly's a little more capable at it. I think Philly is actually in many ways a tougher matchup than even the Bills for the Chiefs. But again, we're at that point with the Chiefs. If you want to, you know, it's like the old boxing metaphor. Like you want to be the champ, you got to beat the champ. At this point, it's just that simple. You have to find a way to beat these guys. It's very difficult to do. To bring it back to the Broncos with an important offseason for them before we move on. What you saw in this round, again, teams that could run when they wanted to run, not when you needed it, when you wanted to run, they could run. You wanted to run on 3rd down, they could run. All 4 of the teams that we saw in this round could run. All of them. You talked about Goddard. Zach Ertz turned back the clock, had over 100 receiving yards for the Commanders. You know about Travis Kelce. The Bills did everything they could to stop him, and they were effective, but he's still Travis Kelce. The movement this year in the NFL are the 2 things the Broncos need the most: tight ends and running backs. Go look at the teams that have succeeded through the playoffs. Tight ends and running backs. Tight ends and power running game. The Broncos need them both. So if they want to get to where these guys are, they're going to need to start that.
And that's the beauty. And I know you can talk to Troy Renck about it when he joins you here at the bottom of the hour. But you know, that's the beauty of, you know, it sucks to not be in the playoffs with your team, but it also gives you an opportunity as a fan to be able to look and say, what am I missing?
Yeah,
what's missing on this roster? What does my team not have that they need to have to be able to find success? And obviously, a power running game is a big part of that. But look, I am so tired of talking about the tight end position with this squad. George Payton, please, for the love of God, find a tight end.
I mean, Zach Ertz is a free agent after the year. Who knows?
It's a draft one.
Yeah, you need to draft one. We'll see what the Broncos continue to do. The Super Bowl is
draft
set.
Loveland, draft one of those guys.
Draft
please get a tight end.
Chiefs and Eagles will go at it again. They last did following the 2022 season.
It's going to be so stupid next week in New Orleans when you and I are there having to talk about the same crap.
I think it's going to be a good game. I'm excited. I'm excited about it.
Oh, stop it.
I am. I'm excited about it.
Nobody
all
cares.
Sorts of storylines. Stop.
Same stupid teams.
Okay, Nate's a grump. Well, whatever. We'll move on to a local team that has some championship aspirations.
Eagles.
The Colorado Avalanche made a blockbuster deal involving Mikko Rantanen as they try to keep their cap window open. We'll talk about that next.
So many bills. I can't even afford charcuterie.
No summer vacation. That's a thing. The worst? Talking on the phone with my voice. Like an animal.
Adulting is hard. Hooters is easy. All the games, all the wings, all the beers, all season. No worries. Hooters.
Mikko Rantanen dealt from the Avalanche this weekend, gets to Carolina in a three-way deal. Technically, Rantanen dealt to Chicago. Chicago then retains half his salary, flips him to Carolina as Carolina is going for it. They add Taylor Hall in there as well, but for the Avalanche, they surrender Mikko Rantanen. They get back 2 draft picks, a second-round pick in this upcoming draft, and then a 4th rounder in 2026. The players they get back, Jack Drury, if that name's familiar, it's Chris Drury's nephew, and Martin Necas. Now, and Necas, when you're talking about the main player they bring back, at the time of the trade, Mikko Rantanen was 6th in the NHL in scoring. Necas was 11th, Nate. He's 2 years younger. He's under contract for this year and next. Rantanen was set to be a free agent. And for almost a year now, the Avs and Rantanen's camp have been trying to find a long-term deal that works for both. This is a tough spot because Rantanen, who's been a 90-point performer and consistent and reliable and physically has all the tools. Everyone knows how good the Moose is looking to get about $14 million a year, which is going to be what he probably deserves on the open market. The Avs know they can't get quite that far. They haven't been able to make the long-term deal. They decided, all right, if Rantanen is going to be bent on testing the free agent market to get his value, we know we can't get it back. So we're going to make a move and deal our guy to a team that wants what they call in the NHL, right, a rental player. And Carolina knows this as well, and try to make sure that we keep our championship window open. A painful trade for Colorado Avalanche fans, but I dare say that the return, Nate, was not unreasonable.
No, I got to be honest with you. I applaud McFarland and company for what they did. You kidding me? I think they did. I think they did great. Why is my wife calling me when she knows I'm on the air?
You might need to get that.
So she's traveling right now.
But Rantanen has 64 points on the air. Necas has 57.
Yeah, so
he's scoring 2 points for the Avs yesterday against the Rangers. He cracked the top 10. So you still have 2 guys in the top 10 in scoring, even after trading Rantanen.
Yeah, I mean, and look, I think that this is as good as you could have asked for for the Avalanche. I mean, you did a 2-for-1, and you got a couple of picks, by the way. Which it never hurts.
A second rounder.
I mean, that never hurts to be able to have some picks, especially a second rounder. I wouldn't have expected a second rounder to be tossed in there. I would have expected, a third and a fourth, or maybe, a fourth and a fifth. I mean, honestly, because you got 2-for-1. So I'm very impressed by this deal for the Avs. It stung. And as I said on social media over the weekend, 24 hours removed from it, I was able to sit back and go, no, this is actually pretty damn good. I really like Necas. I think that he is a good player. I think that Drury provides them with some additional depth. But I like what we're seeing out of Necas already. The 2 assists for him that happened yesterday on the game against the Rangers. And obviously Drury scored the first goal of the game off of an assist from Necas. So you put all of those things together. I think this team did what it needed to do. How many times, whether we are talking about the especially about the Rockies, but about any team in this town or any team in professional sports, the number of times that you watch guys walk and you sit back as a fan and you go, we couldn't have gotten something at the deadline. And so everybody that I talked to over the weekend, including a couple of friends of mine that are big hockey fans like I am, all said the same thing. You didn't want to see it, but if you had to, I don't know that you could have asked for a better outcome on Colorado's side of this. The flip of it is Svechnikov, Aho, and Rantanen.
Yeah. Carolina.
The Eastern Conference has got to be peeing down their leg right now, because that is a dangerous line in the East. Carolina has been trying to get over the hump, especially in the postseason. Last year, I had a bet on them. I thought they were going to make it out of the East last year, and obviously they didn't. They continue to flounder earlier in the playoffs than I think the talent on that roster says that they should, and they've got good goaltending. So but with all of that put together, the Eastern Conference has got to be sitting back going, son of a bitch.
And they had a Taylor Hall as well in the
Yes.
second line. I mean, they're stacked.
Good
They're
God,
stacked.
Carolina
No
got
excuses
good.
for Carolina. But for the Avs, see, every week they waited because, look, this negotiation, these have been going on for almost a year. And every week you wait, the value goes down.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that simple. Drury and I'm sorry, I butchered the name again. Necas, thank you. They both have this year and next year on their deals. So the Avs have the room to make a little bit going forward. And in Drury's case, you get a fourth line center. That feels like center is more or less set now. You have McKinnon, you have Middlestat, you have Colton, and then you have you have Drury there. So you feel like you're okay along in center. Miles Wood came back after missing 27 games. So you're excited about that. Nichushkin, who knows how long it will be, but he's not on IR. They said he's just kind of he's week to week at this point. Then we'll find out what's going on with Gabriel Landeskog, if anything. And by the way, on that, who knows if we'll see as the season goes along. It's possible that maybe they pull a Vegas, right? And as soon as the LTIR deals no longer impact the salary cap, look who comes back. But the Avalanche, that's not a plan. That's a hope. The idea is to get Nichushkin back for sure. There's a difference in the way these guys play. Now, of course, Rantanen is big, strong, a powerful guy that can drive to the net, that can do all those things. That is not what his replacement is. This is a speed guy. He's one of the fastest guys in the league, along with McKinnon. He's explosive. He's got burst. He's more of a passer than a goal scorer, but he is a goal scorer. That's the part I wondered about a little bit, because the Avalanche at times can overpass. And on that top line, yeah, I know. On that top line, you wonder how that goes.
I didn't mean to spit take that comment.
No, but that's true, and it's an issue. So you got a lot of guys that are passers.
Yelling at my television, shoot the puck.
I actually wonder if this is going to get Nathan McKinnon to shoot a little bit more, because he's going to be set up very well by a premier passer who can be on the wing. I like the bigger bodies on the wing. And I don't think the Avalanche necessarily got better from this trade. But I think it's fair to say they did not get substantially worse. And depending on how Drury plays, if he can help stabilize that fourth line,
so
it may make a difference.
So here's where I'm going to tell you I actually think the Avs got better.
Oh, okay.
And it is because I'm going to ask you guys to step back for a second to the 30,000 foot level of this. I believe that what this move did for the Avs is extended their Stanley Cup window. It opened the window wider if you're looking at a calendar. Okay? And the reason I say that is you got Mac, okay? Mac's signed. You've got Makar signed. However, partway through McKinnon's deal, Makar's deal is going to come up, and you're going to have to figure out how to pay him. Okay? And so what you did by not getting yourself into a 14, 13, 5, whatever AAV contract for McKinnon, or excuse me, for Rantanen, is you set yourself up to be able to spread those dollars and manage the cap that we know is going to grow. The cap is going to go up. And so you're going to give yourself a lot more flexibility to be able to take McKinnon and Makar and surround them, in my opinion, with guys that you can say are Bs, B pluses, B minuses, maybe a couple of C pluses in there. But if you had tried to go in there and say, we are going to have 3 guys on this roster that are all making a baker's dozen or more $1 million a year, you are going to handcuff yourself with that salary cap because of the of how it gets spread out on the average annual value, you need to do to put some talent around them. And so by doing this deal and getting somebody like Necas and getting somebody like Drury, and remember, Necas has another year on his deal.
Right.
He doesn't come up until after next season that you have to figure out what you want to do with Necas, unless you've already got an idea of some sort of an extension that you want to do with him. But he's not going to cost you 14. And you've set yourself up now to take that championship window and keep it open longer. And that is why I think the Avs got better with what they did. It's not in this moment instantaneously better, okay? But what they did is they clearly solved part of their goaltending issue with the moves they made earlier this year. And in this one, what they did is they have massaged the salary not in 2025, but in what it's going to mean for them for the next 3 or 4 seasons. And I think in doing so, they have kept the window open longer. Hey, Nuggets, you paying attention?
Yeah, it's obviously a little bit different world in the NBA, but we'll talk about them in a little bit as well. By the way, is to Nate's point, out of the top 12 forwards, only Jonathan Drouin is an unrestricted free agent at the end of this year. If you count Gabriel Landeskog, is signed. Out of the top 6 defensemen, the only one that is an unrestricted free agent right now is Calvin DeHaan.
Yes.
Everybody else is signed this year and next, including both goaltenders.
If you believe that both of those guys are valuable, DeHaan as well as Drouin, you can get them without breaking the bank, and you can extend them back out.
Right.
That is part of what I'm talking about with this window staying open longer, and that is why I believe that this trade deal actually made the Avs better. If you're willing to look at the whole picture and say, okay, we might not be able to make the kind of run this year in the playoffs that we would have if Moose were here, but at the same time, we're going to be a factor now for a long time. And you're going to be a factor as long as you've got McKinnon and Makar. That will always be the case. 2 of the best players on the planet. But I think what they did is set themselves up to be able to stack things behind those 2 to continue to be great.
And you got a top 10 scorer in the league on your way back, standing right now. So things could have been far worse for the Avs. A tough move, but hey, when you want to keep a window open,
and man,
that's what happened. That's how you have to do it.
Moose, Carolina, go get them. Go beat them up in the East. I would love to see that. I love Sebastian Aho, one of my favorite players, not on the Avs. I have a couple of favorite players that are not on the Avs. One of them is Kirill Kaprizov with Minnesota, because God, he is so much fun to watch. The other one is Sebastian Aho with Carolina. The third one is probably Quinn Hughes with Vancouver. God, he's good. Good defenseman to watch. So it's fun to see some talent on other teams. But Moose, go get him in the East.
Well, we'll talk more about this, of course, as the day goes along. We'll ask our friend Troy Renck about it as well. And thank you, Nate. Troy Renck joins us from the Denver Post and, of course, the host of the Broncos podcast with Troy Renck. And Troy, we have our Super Bowl. Surprise, surprise. It's the favorites. It is the Chiefs and the Eagles again. If you are Josh Allen and the Bills, you have to be wondering what you can do. Allen in his career against Mahomes and the Chiefs is 0-4 in the playoffs against every other team, 7-2. This just seems to be a hump they cannot get over.
Yeah, and I'm not even going to put it on Josh Allen. I hated their 4th down calls, like they just went to the playground and made stuff up. I mean, I think they got jobbed on the spot on the 1 4th down. Why they don't use laser technology in a $25 billion business is beyond me, but that's not why they lost as much as I think the Chiefs get calls. The reality is Dalton Kincaid's got to catch that pass. I mean, this idea was a difficult pass. No, it wasn't. That's a pass a high school kid should be expected to catch. I mean, he dives once you leave your feet, but he didn't really have to dive. I mean, it's such a catchable ball that the reason they lose to the Chiefs for me is not Josh Allen. It's because Andy Reid outcoaches Sean McDermott, and Sean McDermott's defense cannot figure out the Chiefs. They just can't figure them out. Every time they play the Chiefs offense seems like they've been struggling the last 2-3 years. They play the Bills. It's a panacea. They hadn't scored 30 points in a game all season, Sean. They're out 32 against the Bills. So I'm not going to put this on Josh Allen. I feel for him. It's kind of like when teams are trying to go through Michael Jordan. Like you just feel like you're playing for second place at times. And, I think a lot of us have Chiefs fatigue, but the Chiefs deserve to win this game because the Bills don't execute in the biggest moments. And against the Chiefs, you have to execute on 3rd and 4th down. You have to get a key stop, and the Bills' defense just wasn't good enough for me. So I'm not putting this on Allen. The first couple drives, he looked shaky. You can criticize him for that. That's fine. But the reality is this game, for me, goes back to Reed out-coaching McDermott and McDermott's defense having no answers for the Chiefs.
Yeah, Patrick Mahomes gets his first ever game with 2 rushing touchdowns. So they hold Travis Kelce to 19 receiving yards. It still doesn't matter. It is sort of that Reed Mahomes axis here, where these guys know each other so well. They know what they can do. The Chiefs just have that slow heartbeat. So much of that core has been there for so long, not just on offense, but even on defense. Guys like Chris Jones back there, wreaking havoc in the offensive line, especially on those 4th downs. So this is just a team that's they've been together. They're battle tested. They have a great all-time coach, and now they have an interesting opportunity. Again, a rematch of the Super Bowl a couple times ago. Andy Reid is the all-time winningest coach of both of the teams in the Super Bowl, and seems like every opportunity that Philadelphia has to maybe say that they were right doesn't go very well. But this time it does feel like this Eagles team is even more set up to beat the Chiefs than the one that lost only by 3 a couple of years ago, and the Chiefs had to score 17 points in the 4th quarter to get over the hump.
Yeah, I mean, our friends at Bet Online have the Chiefs as an early 1.5 point favorite with what I think 48.5 point over under. And that really, for me, that comes down to, if you look at Mahomes versus Jalen Hurts, you're going to take Mahomes 10 out of 10 times, even though Hurts played really well. I was surprised how well Hurts played, frankly, against Washington. I mean, Dan Quinn's last 2 playoff losses, my God, against the Packers and the Eagles. I think he gave up 100 points in those games and about 1,000 yards. But Washington's a great story. Don't need to dismiss it. But wow, did they get hammered? Now, listen, Sean, if they're going to beat the Chiefs, they're going to have to use the formula the Broncos used to beat the Packers in Super Bowl 32. Run the football and play good defense. Not great defense, but play good defense. And they're an opportunistic defense under Vic Fangio. They'll give up yards, as we all know with Vic, between the 20s. But they have a knack for punching the ball out, for coming up with takeaways. They're going to have to, but that is the way to beat the Chiefs. Keep away from Mahomes. Hurts is going to have to be part of that running attack. I think 2 weeks will help him with his knee, but it's going to come down to Saquon Barkley, who has arguably, and I covered the Terrell Davis season when he had 2,000 yards and they won a Super Bowl that year. I mean, Barkley has a chance to go down as the greatest single season running back ever. In terms of total yards, it's more games and everything, but just the explosiveness, the number of 50 yards. And I mean, so the blueprint's there, John. Run the football, run the heck out of the football, and find a way to play good defense, not great defense. And if you can do that, you're going to have a chance. But again, you have to execute situationally, whether that's 3rd down stops, whether that's 4th down conversions. And no one does the 4th down and short better than the Eagles, so that helps. But I think for me, it is a toss-up game. I really do think it's, and there's going to be a lot of Eagles fans there, man. They are going to, I can't blame Chiefs fans for not going crazy because they've been there, 5 straight times or 5 out of 6, whatever it is. The Eagles fans are going to invade New Orleans. It's going to feel like an Eagles crowd. I think it's a toss-up game, but it's really, for me, going to come down to, can Saquon Barkley throw together a game like Terrell Davis had against the Packers, 150 yards, 2 touchdowns, control the clock.
And you can't make mistakes. Obviously, the Commanders with 4 turnovers, that's a way to lose. The final score is what it is. If you are a -4 in the turnovers, you don't win that football game. I don't have to take a look at anything else, and I can tell you lost. But in the Chiefs win over the Bills, they're the first team in this playoffs to win despite having a negative turnover differential. Now, granted, the Bills didn't turn it over, and the Chiefs turned it over once, so it wasn't anything of the 4-0. But it's just one of those games where you simply can't make mistakes, because in these big games, the Chiefs don't. Patrick Mahomes in his playoff career is 17-3, Troy, including one of those 3 is a loss in the Super Bowl to Tom Brady. 3 of those wins include the Super Bowls he's already won. He tied John Elway and Brady by being now the quarterback to start of 5 different Super Bowls. I mean, this is kind of mind-bending to look at Patrick Mahomes' career and realizing this guy isn't even 30 yet.
Yeah, he's not going away, and that's why when you're the Broncos, you got to figure out a way to deal with it. Now they're better. They're 2-2 against them the last 2 years. They got that going for them. Even if the one this last year at the end of the season was a gimme, doesn't matter. I mean, at least have some confidence. But yeah, Mahomes, he's got 3 losses in the playoffs, and I think so 2 of those are against Tom Brady. One when he was with Tampa, one was when he was with the Patriots and beat them in Arrowhead, and then Joe Burrow. I mean, they don't make mistakes. He doesn't make mistakes. They're very similar to the Patriots in this way, that that Patriots dynasty, that they reinvent themselves every week as necessary, and they're not afraid to use guys who are not part of the game plan for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, a month. I mean, Samaje Perine is a ghost in uniform. He's a special teams guy for them. They need a conversion late to seal the game, and it goes to Perine. I mean, that's the genius of Andy Reid, is every play matters to him, and they use guys and show confidence in guys where it makes no sense. And those guys deliver. Like the Broncos, if they had a play like that and it went to Blake Watson, what are the chances he catches it or he converts it? I mean, like, that's the difference, is when you look at the Chiefs, if the ball goes to, if it would have gone to Nate Atkins, or something, like, do we have confidence in the Broncos that's going to end the game with a 3rd down conversion? But if that guy's on the Chiefs, it's just like, oh, that makes sense. I don't even know this guy's on the team, and he just got a 14-yard reception. And so when Kelsey's not doing anything, other guys pick it up. I mean, Worthy played his best game as a pro. I mean, again, I think the one pass should have been an incompletion, and we can go back to the 4th down conversion. But the calls in this game were not nearly as egregious. And I give Mahomes some credit for not playing the LeBron card and dancing around and trying to draw these personal fouls. I do think some of the criticism got to his ear, where he's like, because he went out of bounds multiple times, where usually he gets there and then dives back in and forces penalties. But again, if you're going to beat Mahomes and Reed, you're going to have to knock them out. You're not going to win on the judge's scorecard. You're not going to win that way. And if you're Buffalo, if you're going to ever beat them, you got to get them at home. And I don't know that a Sean McDermott-led team can beat them. I honestly wonder in a truth serum moment, if Belichick were still out there with this loss, if you fire McDermott and go get Belichick to try to beat the Chiefs. They wouldn't. It's just not how Buffalo operates, but it just feels like it's like Buck Showalter was always the guy to get the team to the doorstep, whether it was Arizona, whether it was the Yankees, the Orioles, but he could never get them to cross the finish line. And it just feels that way with the Bills. They're not going to beat the Chiefs as compromised with McDermott leading the way. And maybe Belichick couldn't, but it would be a fascinating thing to say, man, let's just go get Belichick for 2 years and see if he can beat the Chiefs in one of these years.
What's funny, Troy, is that discussion years ago happened in Philadelphia with Andy Reid.
Exactly.
Look where you can get him to. We can get him there, but you can't get him over the hump. We're going to move on from Andy Reid. Andy Reid goes to Kansas City, and of course, we're fully aware of the legacy that is not anywhere done at this point for Andy Reid. But that's always the risk too, right? That
it can be worse.
Having a really good look out of the last 5 years, and you talked about Mahomes losing to Brady twice and Burrow once. Out of the last 5 years, the Bills have been eliminated by the Chiefs in 4 of them, and the other one was a loss to Burrow and the Bengals in 2022 when the Bengals went to the Super Bowl. So, I mean, you're talking about one of those situations in which the AFC is almost historically stacked, and the Bills, for whatever reason, just keep coming up a smidge short, and it's got to just drive you nuts. Because I thought about this morning, and I'll ask you about the Avs in a minute, but those 1990s, late 1990s Avalanche with Joe Sakic and Peter Forsberg and Patrick Waugh and that whole crew of phenomenal players, it feels like they would have won multiple Stanley Cups if they weren't in the same conference with the Detroit Red Wings, who had Yzerman and Lidstrom and Fedorov and Hasek and all of those guys. Sometimes there's just one of those other teams. In the Avs case, they did get through, and the Avs and the Red Wings kind of went back and forth with that sort of thing. But the Bills, they're just sort of stuck. The 1 year they dodged the Chiefs, they get Burrow and the Bengals when they were absolutely rolling. It's just how it illustrates how difficult the AFC is. And while the Broncos have had a good run this year, surprising season, made the playoffs, the jump from being out of the playoffs to in the wild card is one, and the Broncos have made it. The jump from being a wild card team to being AFC championship level, especially with the teams that are in there, that's another story entirely.
Yeah, I mean, the one advantage they would have is if you ever play the Chiefs in that game, you have familiarity. There's nothing about Arrowhead that's going to intimidate you. I mean, you got to be a better team than they are now, but it's some of these teams going to Arrowhead and just feel unprepared. And, here's what the Bills, they give off like the Utah Jazz vibes to me, where they had Stockton and Malone and like, God, how do they not win one? And it's like when you watch the Bills play, you're like, how do they not win one? And that's my concern with the Bills is just you're going to run out of time with Josh. Josh Allen's not going to have great seasons every season. And so when you have a season like he did, where he certainly has an argument for MVP, those are the years you typically win it. And they're not going to. And it's why, frankly, I told you last week, I wanted the Ravens to beat the Bills because I thought the Ravens are more equipped to beat the Chiefs. They have more weapons. They're more versatile, but the Ravens do dumb stuff. They're inconsistent. They beat themselves, and they deserve to lose to the Bills. But it's like, if you're going to beat the Chiefs, you got to play. It's not a perfect game, but it's just you have to play situational football, smart football. And again, it reminds me of the Jazz back in the day when they were so good. They never won one. The Suns for a while there with Nash and that group where they're, this great regular season team and everything sets up. But when you got to actually have it, in a moment on the road, and Mahomes is the guy you're going against. Good luck. I mean, and I credit Mahomes. I mean, I get tired of the Chiefs, like a lot of people that live in the state of Colorado, but I don't get tired of watching Mahomes. I mean, he's brilliant. He deserves all the credit. They're just not the fun watch. I mean, their offense is okay. They're a defensive minded team, frankly. And I give Spagnuolo the best call of the game was that blitz at the end.
Yep, absolutely.
I mean, because everyone's like, "Oh, Josh should have turned his hips up." Nobody does that. Like, give me a break. He misread the coverage when he slid the protection. Perhaps that could be on him. But you're not going to backpedal 7 feet, throw off, open your left hip. Give me a break. These guys that stop their clickers and say, "See, the guy's wide open." Yeah, come on now, come on. That's guys who've never played a sport in their life. But that said, Kincaid should have caught it. And if he catches that, it's this great catch. Maybe they go down and score a touchdown, Sean. Everyone's like, well, they could have tied it. How do we know they don't score a touchdown? Again, those are the different moments in a game.
Yep, it is those little moments when these two teams play, and it is obviously a treat. The Super Bowl again, Chiefs and the Eagles, sort of the Andy Reid Bowl again. Reid came out on top with the last time a few years ago. I think the Eagles are better positioned to beat the Chiefs this time around. Remember, Jalen Hurts had 3 rushing touchdowns yesterday. He had 3 rushing touchdowns in that Super Bowl 3 years ago as well. But now he's got Saquon Barkley with him, so obviously we'll have a chance to break the Super Bowl down, of course, over the next 2 weeks. But I think it's going to be a really, really, really entertaining one. I'm excited about it. But I did want to talk to you. Last time we had a chance to talk to you on Friday, we talked a little bit about the Colorado Avalanche. You wrote a good story about them last week. And of course, then boom, they trade Mikko Rantanen. We know they've been trying to negotiate a deal. Rantanen would like to get paid reportedly around $14 million a year. He's an unrestricted free agent after the year. He will probably get it from someone. And the Avalanche finally decided after negotiating for a year, they just can't get him to where he needs to be and where he wants to be. And quite frankly, for Mikko Rantanen, where he deserves to be salary-wise. And instead, they did what the Avalanche usually like to do the other way around. They shipped Rantanen out as a rental player, and he ends up in Carolina. But I think you were in the studio as Nate and I were talking about it. The return the Avalanche get for a rental player, even with someone as skilled as Mikko Rantanen, was awfully impressive. I give the Avalanche front office a ton of credit for getting a return for a player that you knew, as great as he was not going to wear your sweater another year.
Yeah. I mean, again, if you're telling me that, because in baseball, you see this a lot. Once you get to the trade deadline and a guy's going to be a free agent, you're really
trade him to the Yankees or the Dodgers or the Mets, right?
Right. But you're compromised because it's a limited market. Teams that want the player, and it's even a more limited that eventually think they can keep the player and retain the player in free agency. So you're up against it. And so in that context, it was a good trade. My experience, Sean, of 35 years doing this, you never win when you trade a star player. And just look through the history of it. I would say the only star player trade I've seen a team win was when I covered the Rockies and they traded Matt Holliday for Carlos Gonzalez and Houston Street. And Street was great for a couple years, and Cargo became one of their all-time best players. Difference is Billy Beane. The reason teams traded with Billy, he'd give you his top players. He would identify a guy he wanted, and he really wouldn't take people off the table. With Rantanen, he deserves $14 million. We all get Leon Draisaitl gets it. That's the same agent. And I was asking people, like, why not trade him before this season then? And then everyone says, once the Oilers guy sets the market, that changed everything. And they felt like for months they could bridge the gap. And obviously they got to a point last week where when the agent's not taking the calls, it's the Scott Boras thing of, hey, it's 14 million. Okay, so that means 12 and a half. It's 14. That means 13. No, it's 14. You get to a point when they're not taking your calls and there's no back and forth, then you'd make the best deal you can. And in that regard, they did make the best deal they could. I got to see it. I'm not Troy Hockey. I'm not going to pretend to be. I like some of the pieces they brought back. I watched the Rangers game yesterday, and you see some of they're better on the power play finally, which they've been slumping on. But it's just when you drop a hand grenade in the locker room, in the room, as they say, it's tough. It's tough, and it just feels like the chance to win a cup went away with this trade. Now, the chance, as Nate said, to maybe be better next year and the year after, that's certainly on the table. It's just hard when you see a team that, when they get hot, can beat anyone. I don't see how they can beat anyone in the playoffs without the Moose. Now, if Nichushkin gets healthy and gets going again, maybe, because you still have then three of the best players with Makar, Nichushkin, and obviously Nate McKinnon. I just can't see a scenario right now where they make a cup run without Moose. That's the disappointing part of it. I understand the deal. It's just, it's hard to see a team that were like, man, they got a shot to win it all. Blackwood gets hot. They get going. They get their power play going. Who knows? And then they trade him. You're like, okay, I get it. But I just don't see him winning at all now. I just don't see him making a run now without him.
It is a little hard to envision. The Avs, of course, trying to get things settled so they can keep that window open salary-wise. They've got to get Nichushkin back. And they've got to figure out what's going on with Gabriel Landeskog, who's signed for multiple years at $7 million per. Is Landeskog, after this year, if he can't come back, does he hang it up? Does that get some cap relief? The Avs are looking at that. I think this has been a year where it's been pretty wobbly. And not only have they not played all that well, some of that was due to the goaltending. The goaltending, I think, is fixed. But, you're still hearing Jared Bednar over the last couple weeks multiple times talk about a lack of effort, which has got to be really frustrating. It just feels like this is one of those years for the Avs that things just aren't going. And I guess I'll ask you this. We talk about the Eagles and the Chiefs, right? And Andy Reid wasn't quite good enough to get the Eagles over the hump, so they move on. And of course, he's one of the best coaches in history and wins multiple titles. Jared Bednar has been with the Avs for a while. I do not think Jared Bednar was the problem for the Colorado Avalanche. However, hockey changes its coaches like people change laundry. And if things are only happening for a couple weeks of bad hockey, sometimes longtime coaches get swept out. Is there the possibility that in Jared Bednar's case, maybe the team's going to look at this after the year and say, it's not Bednar's fault, but the message is stale? And maybe, like you were talking about with Sean McDermott, could the Avs be looking at something like that?
Well, I think it really does depend on how the season ends. That if they squeak in and then they get knocked out in the first round, and we're hearing the same thing of lack of defensive synchronicity, guys not getting the message, I mean, then you have to have difficult conversations. I don't think it's Bednar, but again, in pro sports, you don't turn over the roster. You change the coach. That's just the reality of this. He's the best coach the Avs have ever had. I would like to see him, if they're going to retool it, to get a chance going into next season, kind of from jump. And I do think, to your point, you brought it up, and it was a great point. They need clarity on Landeskog. I would try to go to Gabe and find a scenario where, is there a way we give you a game, you get back on the ice, you skate around, you wave to your family, and because at this point he's going to be 3 years without playing, Sean.
Yeah.
So are we going to say he's going to come back next year, 4 years removed? I mean, we all love Gabe. This is not personal, but at some point, the Nichushkin Landeskog thing have to be figured into the equation when we evaluate Bednar. I think when you go into next season, you have to know where you stand on both those guys, both of them.
And I don't think
now at least you have clarity on Mikko. You have clarity. You don't like it, but you have clarity. They need clarity on Val. They need clarity on Gabe going into next season. But if they get broomed and they look terrible and it's a first round bump, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that Bednar is completely safe. It would still surprise me the way they do business. But I would be inclined, as we sit here today, to say I would want to see Bednar start from scratch next year, new roster, and clarity on Gabe and Val. And obviously, you'd now have clarity on Moose.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I don't think Bednar's the issue, and I don't think the way the Avs do business, I don't expect a change. But obviously, we'll have to see how they finish up. I mean, bright side, the new guys get 3 points in the win yesterday. You know, we'll kind of see how it shakes out. They'll get another crack at it against the Islanders tomorrow. Troy, thanks so much for all the insight. Obviously, it's going to be a fun Super Bowl. I think it's a matchup that there's a lot of things to tell. But I guess the last one before we head back to football, and I know Nate started talking about it when he mentioned it. But look. This championship, this round, all I could think about, all I'm taking notes, trying to tie it back to the Broncos. Look at the tight end play. Look at how important it is. And look at the power running game. Teams that can run when they want to run, not when they think they have to, but when they want to run. The Eagles do it. The Commanders do it. The Bills do it. Even the Chiefs, as we saw, do it from multiple positions. We saw Mahomes get 2 rushing touchdowns for the first time in his career. Tight ends and power running are the 2 things the Denver Broncos need the absolute most, and it's the 2 things that I think separate them as you watch the way the NFL, which is cyclical, it is going towards that. You and I have talked all year about Audric Estime on the power running idea. The Broncos, unless I'm missing something, to me, when I look at the teams that are winning it all right now and that are going far in the playoffs, those 2 things are constants on every single one of those teams. Broncos don't have either.
Well, and you need a dual threat quarterback, so I think you need to run Nix more next year. I want to see him finish next year with 550, 600 yards rushing, number one. I think the back issue brought that number down, but a dual threat quarterback and use him that way. Don't just say he is. Use him that way. He protects himself. Secondly, you got to run the football. It's clear. Run the ball, stop the run. And you got to win in the middle of the field. And that's why that tight end is so important. You've got to win in today's game in the middle of the field, and they don't consistently because they don't have a tight end. I will be shocked if this offseason they don't add a tight end and a running back to compete with Estime to win the job, whether that's Austin Gentry, whether it's the kid from Hampton from North Carolina, the kid from Iowa, and you can pick a tight end in the draft. There's 5 of them. If they don't get a tight end and running back, I will be absolutely floored, because it's clearly a weakness and it is the league's strength of the best teams. So it's a double whammy. Sean Payton's a smart guy. He knows the weaknesses of this offense. And if you look at how he's used tight ends, whether you go to Shockey, whether you go to Jimmy Graham, I mean, it's not like the guy doesn't want to use him. It's just clear he doesn't trust to use him the way the room is now. So I have every faith if he gets the right guy, that guy could have, 55 catches and 750 yards. 5 touchdowns. That's what they need. They don't need a superstar. They just need a guy who gets third downs and can move the chains and is a security blanket for Bo Nix.
Yeah, we saw what happens with Sean Payton when he got his guy in Bo Nix, the opportunity to draft maybe the tight end and running back coming up for the Broncos. Troy, appreciate it. Thanks so much.
You got it, my friend. Have a great show.
Thank you very much, Troy Renck, joining us from the Denver Post. Make sure you check out the Broncos podcast with Troy Renck, too. Terrific podcast. Very proud to have that as part of the Mile High Sports Network. The Denver Nuggets had an abysmal game in Minnesota. They try to bounce back in Chicago. We'll talk more about that in a moment.
When I go to court, these aren't my clients. These are my friends. These are people that I believe in. And they have one shot, just one shot for justice. If they've come to me and we've gotten to trial, their life has been turned upside down in some awful way. And I am their only hope. I need to be their champion, to quote Prince Oberyn from Game of Thrones. They need someone in this trial by combat that can fight for them. I'm all they have. So if I haven't put the time in, if I haven't trained, if I haven't humbly looked in the mirror and thought about ways I can be better, and I don't present my best self in court, then I failed them. And that's what motivates me as a trial lawyer, because when this is over, that client goes home. And if I haven't done my best for him, if I haven't been his champion, then I've failed.
The Denver Nuggets get back at it tonight in Chicago after a rough loss in Minnesota. They got smoked by the Minnesota Timberwolves. Just a bad game on the whole for the Nuggets, unfortunately. They get absolutely clobbered in that one. And just sort of an odd one. Look, they were sort of due, I think, to a certain extent for it's just one of those days, right? And they got it here when you're talking about that loss on Saturday. The Timberwolves 133-104, and the Nuggets never led the game. at any point. They allowed Minnesota to shoot 69% in the first quarter. They gave up 40 points in that first quarter. You just don't win a lot of games when you give up a 40 burger to anybody in any quarter, even in the high scoring NBA. And for the Nuggets, it felt like one of those nights. They have an opportunity to cleanse the palate. Anthony Edwards goes off, gets 34 points. Anthony Gobert 14 and 14. We're talking about points and rebounds. Julius Randle with 21 points as well. Minnesota's depth obviously is better than Denver's depth. We certainly understand that. They have Naz Reid and Alexander Walker coming off the bench. Those are difference-making guys. But what struck me as strange in the loss is that the Nuggets still ended up playing so many big minutes. It peeled back at the end, which is good, and you finally kind of emptied the bench. But we'll find out if they sort of wash the taste out of their mouth tonight. They have a great opportunity against a Bulls team that is middling at best. They're 19th and 27. They're still be in the play-in tournament if the Eastern Conference held that way. Obviously, there's a long way to go. But they've lost 5 in a row at home. And they've also just lost 6 of their last 7, period. So it's been a rough go for the Bulls. The Nuggets, in this case, it feels like they have to go out there and take this win. Obviously, there'll be a little focus on Zach LaVine, leading them in scoring at 24 points a game for a little while there. The talk about maybe a Michael Porter for Zach LaVine swap ended up being dominating for a bit of time, but now the Nuggets have played so much better with Aaron Gordon coming back and playing off the bench, and with Jamal Murray playing more like he is. The need hasn't really been there for the Nuggets in January. The numbers are really good. Nikola Jokic, of course, is on another planet. 27.3 points. You're talking about 13.8 rebounds, which is silly, and 11.5 assists. He's easily averaging a triple-double in January, but it is Jamal Murray that back at 20 points per game. I think that's the exciting spot. So he's played rather well. And then the scoring down there, Michael Porter Jr. 16.8, a little lower than you'd get, but that changes because obviously Murray's been playing better and Russell Westbrook has been moved into the starting spot, and he's averaging 15 per, as Westbrook has been really good in January, averaging basically 15, 6, and 6, despite the fact he's not even really playing a heavy minutes, not even playing 30 a game. So I think for the Nuggets, this is just one of those where, okay, you had a lousy game. You've been playing generally good basketball, maybe even arguably great basketball, because since the beginning of the month, the Nuggets only have 4 losses. They've been really very good. So I don't think you sweat this necessarily. The Minnesota game is just one of those. You're on the road, first game of a road trip, just kind of play a little flat. And that shows up in Nikola Jokic, who had 3 rebounds, which is kind of shocking. I mean, Nikola Jokic by accident almost can get 3 rebounds because of his size, but he really wasn't the reason they lost. All across the board, the defense was just abysmal. That's the thing to watch in this. Chicago, quite simply, is not good enough to beat the Denver Nuggets if the Nuggets play their game. They're just not. Chicago is fading. They're looking at trading not only LaVine, but Vucevic as well is on the trade block. That's their top 2 scorers. So the Bulls are looking to basically, if it's not quite a fire sale, they're definitely willing to sort of reinvent. The Nuggets should get this done. The only problem is it's what happened in that first quarter. Defense. We'll talk more about it on Wednesday with Ryan Blackburn when he joins us, but the defense for the Nuggets, even though it has gotten better, is still problematic, especially with teams that shoot well from 3. Of course, you're thinking, isn't that what everybody does nowadays? And the answer is yes, everybody but the Nuggets, basically, who don't take that many threes. So that's a problem. They really have to make sure they contest better, get out there and play better defensive basketball. They don't have to be an elite defensive squad. They're never going to be an elite defensive squad. You have Russell Westbrook out there, Michael Porter Jr. out there. It's not going to be elite, but they can be better than they were on Saturday. And if they do, then they bounce back, they win tonight, and then off you go, because this is a 5-game road trip. They lose the first one in Minnesota. They got Chicago tonight. They go to New York on Wednesday, then Friday at Philly. Joel Embiid not expected to be back by that with the injury. Of course, he never plays Jokic anyway. And then Charlotte to finish it off. And the nice part about that is the only back-to-backs on the last 2 games, that game against Philly and Charlotte. So the opportunity for the Nuggets to get some stuff done on the road. They've been a good road team. Generally, when this team has had a bad loss, they bounce back, at least of late. When you're talking about the way the Nuggets have played on their schedule. They had that really bad loss to Houston, which was their previous loss before the Minnesota one, where they lost by 20 points, and then they came out and they smoked Miami by 20. So they have reacted rather well to the big losses, and hopefully they find a way to do it again. We'll find out. They get tip it off in Chicago, just about 6 p.m. local time. We'll see what the Nuggets are doing, but they need to be able to make a little move here because they're playing well and they've gotten themselves back in the mix. But there's still a little work to do. They're in 4th place. That's good. They're 2 ahead of the Lakers for 5th. The Lakers are on a 3-game winning streak and playing well. But the Nuggets are only 2.5 out of 2nd, which is probably where they'd like to be. They're not going to catch Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City's 9 games ahead of the Nuggets at this point, 6.5 ahead of the Rockets and the Grizzlies. Oklahoma City's going to take the top seed. They'll do it on cruise control. But the Nuggets do have the opportunity and the ability to work their way up to 2nd. But you got to start cashing in these wins, and especially the road wins when they're out there, because we know that the Nuggets can be a very good home team. Their record actually just about the same, 14-8 at home, 14-9 on the road. That's obviously pretty good on both ends. So you'd like to cash this one in and go forward, because you do want to hold off the Lakers and the Clippers, who are behind you. Minnesota, with the win, gets a little closer. They'd still be in the play-in. They're 4 games behind the Nuggets. So we will find out. We'll have a chance to talk about it tomorrow as well. But all sorts of stuff going on. Of course, we know who the Super Bowl is. It is Chiefs and Eagles. Andy Reid gets another opportunity to rub it in to his old team, and in doing so, they'd be the first team to ever win 3 Super Bowl titles. That is a remarkable storyline. We're looking forward to bringing you all of the news next week out there from New Orleans, when Mile High Sports Today will be out there as well. But the Nuggets are in action. The Avalanche, of course, will be playing again with their new look lineup. All sorts of things. The sports world doesn't change. Colorado just keeps moving and moving and moving faster. There's no downtime. It's one of the reasons it's so much fun to cover it with all of you here at Mile High Sports. Thanks to Troy Renck for joining us. Nate Lundy was with us earlier. Danny Bailey is the producer and makes every producer, director, wears many hats, has all of them. It's the only reason we can do the show, and we do it all for you. Thank you for watching it, however you're watching it, live or whether you're consuming it on your schedule. That's why we do it this way. We look forward to getting back at it tomorrow. For everybody here at Mile High Sports, I'm Sean Drotzer. This is Mile High Sports Today.